All right, so welcome to the first training session for Service Enterprise. You are joining a group of several other animal welfare organizations that have been certified in the Service Enterprise process. You see some of them on this slide and the next slide. So this is the first session, Laying the Foundation, Part 1. Your trainers today are myself, Chris Sports, and Seth Montgomery. Again, just as a reminder, normally we will, if we were doing this in a classroom setting, you would have Laying this Foundation as one session, and then building support as a second session. But since that's 4 hours worth of work for each session, we know no one in animal welfare has that kind of time. So we have broken up the sessions into 2 different sections. So we'll be doing the first half of Laying the Foundation today, the second half next week, and then we will get started with the first half of building support at the end of September. Again, we'll take a 2-week break, and then we will come back for session number 4 and wrap up building support mid-October, another 2-week break, do session 5 October 29th, and then our final session is currently scheduled for Tuesday, November 26th. That is the week of Thanksgiving, so I am going to ask all of you to talk amongst yourselves before next week's training session. And then I'm going to take a poll next week to decide whether we're going to keep the last session for November 26th or we're going to move it up a week. But if we move it up a week, then just know you will have 3 weeks between session 5 and session 6 instead of a month. And you will have to be giving a presentation during the final session. So again, think about whether you want to move it up a week or you want to keep it the 26th. Majority will rule. So depending on out of the 10 organizations, however we have the most largest vote for, cannot talk today, guys. Apparently I need more coffee. My apologies. Whichever we have the biggest vote for, to keep it as is or move it up a week, then that's what we're going to go with for that final training session. Again, I don't need an answer today, but I will poll you guys next week, and then we'll confirm session 6. All right, so during orientation, we talked, and during your diagnostic review calls, we talked a lot about the 10 characteristics for service enterprise. These are the basics of nonprofits that operate as a service enterprise. And again, all 10 characteristics are important. The 3 most vital, and I know I quizzed some of you during the diagnostic review session, so thank you, but I cannot express how important it is to remember that out of the 10 characteristics, the 3 most important are planning and development, leadership support, and effective training. So again, if you guys can remember that, the 3 most vital are planning and development, leadership support, and effective training. A, because you're going to want to spend the most time in your action plans working on those along with the remaining characteristics, but B, because you will not be able to certify unless you meet the standards when we get to that point for these 3 characteristics. All right, so today we're going to dive deeper into service enterprise as a change management model for your organization. And here are the objectives for session number 1. At the end of our time together, you will be able to apply leading practices for managing change, build senior leadership alignment, staff commitment, and board support, if you have a board, for the service enterprise transformation, and reimagine how your organization can engage volunteers. Today's session is going to focus on 2 of the service enterprise characteristics, planning and development and leadership support. Again, they are 2 of the 3 most vital. And if you're using the participant materials, whether it's in the binder or the e-copy of those, they are listed on page 2 under session 1. Whenever we're talking about particular characteristics, you'll always see them indicated in the top right-hand corner of the slides as we're going along. So now what I'm going to do, I talked about that group activity. So again, if your team is not in the same room, you're going to now need to find a way to communicate with one another. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give each organization 5 minutes to brainstorm. I want you to talk amongst your team about what you want to gain from the service enterprise training. Again, I'm only going to give you 5 minutes to do this, but come to a consensus about what your team wants to gain from this training. And then I'm going to give each group 1 minute to share out verbally. Okay, so I will be calling on your organization, so you're going to want to have a spokesperson for your organization. All right, so again, take the next 5 minutes to talk about this, and then I will call randomly on each organization to share what they want to gain from the training. And please keep in mind, I'm just going to give everybody 1 minute to do that so that we can stay on track. So with that, your 5 minutes begins now. Okay, guys, you only have a couple more minutes. And Corey, in case you didn't see the chat from Hillary, she's asking you to call into Skype. All right, guys, 1 more minute, and then I'm going to start calling on organizations to share. All right, time is up. Everybody, let's regroup. And not picking on you at all, but Pasco County Animal Services, Spencer, I'm going to ask your team to share out first. So again, if you're muted, I've muted everyone. You'll need to unmute yourself. And if you're calling in via phone, you'll need to dial *6 to unmute. So Spencer, would you tell us please what Pasco County Animal Services would like to gain from the training?
Hey guys, sorry about that. Yeah, we are really excited. We had a great time in our diagnostic talking about our current recruiting process. And Sarah, we were just chatting and mentioning that we're already getting people into orientations for October because we're so full in September. One of the things we're excited about in this training is not only getting people in the door is not the problem, but figuring out what our organization needs across the board from volunteers, how they can help, recruiting those specific volunteers, and then how to manage that to sustain the program.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much, Pasco County. Okay, Candace, Riverside County Animal Services. You guys are second. So whoever's going to be the spokesperson, unmute yourself and let us know what your team wants to gain from the training.
Hi. So we are really interested in retaining our volunteers. That's been a big issue with us, but as our training from last week, we know that we're going to revamp our orientation and include an open house and do some of the changes that we need to help that. And we also want to do a lot of training with employees and volunteers together. And we also want to include getting in higher functioning volunteers where they're in the higher service levels in executive office, admin, maybe the call center and things like that. So
excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, Shelby Humane, you guys are next. Cassidy or Meredith, do you want to tell us what you all are hoping to gain from the training?
Yeah. So we got a few bullet points here. We want staff to be more involved. Not just one or two people handling all the volunteers. We want to build a stronger volunteer base as well as keep a high retention with them.
Right.
That will also make our organization as a whole a lot better and stronger because we want to be a leader in our state for animal welfare.
Mm-hmm.
We can't touch that until we can build our volunteers and get them helping us do the things we need their help with.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes. And it's very common. One of the things that Chris and Jaseth and I see repeatedly 99% of the time is shelters having a retention issue. It's not as much a recruitment issue, particularly for general opportunities like dog walking and cat handling. It's a retention issue, and having enough staff to help not only engage those volunteers, but retain them. So thank you very much. Okay, Heather, SPCA of Texas is next. What do you guys want to gain from the training?
So this is Marissa.
Hi, Marissa.
Heather's off on stuff. So we would like to have a. Oh, this is great. So we would like to see a mindset change with staff working with volunteers. We would like to take volunteers from doing more grunt work to more meaningful work, and improve our volunteer retention.
Excellent. And here we hear volunteer retention again. And I'm about to talk about change management in a second when we get done with this activity, because that's exactly what the service enterprise process is, folks. This is a change management model that's going to help your staff adjust their mindset, and possibly your volunteers too, because we all have had those situations where we've had some volunteers who run amok and because they've been there a while or they've got certain skill sets, think they know more than staff. So this is a change management model, and we'll definitely talk about ways to get your team on board, both staff and volunteers, and engage them. Thank you. Okay, next, San Marcos. You guys are up. Brandon, are you here, or someone else from San Marcos? I know Darianne's busy today.
He is. This is Samantha Armbruster. Some of the things that we came up with were already mentioned, but we talked about not only increasing the numbers of volunteers, but volunteer leaders, getting better placement of those volunteers, that it will better relieve the pressure and stress of staff, and making sure that there's a vibrant culture built around the volunteer program, and allowing the small groups to implement big changes. really just creating that formula for success that we can not only have within our animal shelter program, but that can be replicated throughout the different divisions of the city, and that to be sustainable.
Absolutely. It has to be sustainable. You don't want to do all this work and make all these changes and then you just go back to doing what you've always done. That's the definition of insanity. So love hearing that at the end. Thank you so much. Okay, Diane in Seminole County, you guys are next. And if you're calling in on the phone, you'll have to hit star 6. Got it. Yep. Great.
Here. Okay, so our issue is we have a lot of volunteers here on Wednesdays and Saturdays, but hardly any of the other days of the week. So trying to get volunteers to come in more during other days of the week, so we're not so volunteer heavy 2 days of the week with no volunteers the rest of the week.
Right.
And then being able to get the volunteers to be self-starters where they come in and they go straight to a task. They don't have to, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? We want them to know what they need to do and just go and start it without, you know, walking around trying to figure out what to do.
Right.
We want them to be able to see something that needs to be done, or, you know, have certain jobs and then go and just start that job right away.
Excellent. Thank you. Makes sense, right? You want to effectively onboard them and train them so they're not showing up scratching their heads, right? That's not what you want to get after training. So excellent. And then doing a deeper dive into recruiting to see if you can fill some of those gaps during the week and maybe even communicate more effectively to your current volunteer pool why. You're going to hear Chris and Seth and I talk a ton about why, or the impact. Right? Impact is a word. Why and impact are one and the same. You're going to hear us talk about that a ton during the training and the coaching, but why you need more hands during the week, right? What that looks like for your animals and your shelter. So thank you. Okay, second chance. Are you guys, I know you're having internet issues, but I hear you're on the phone. Are you here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Doug, I can hear you. So tell us what your team wants to gain from the training.
The main thing is, I feel like I'm repeating everybody else's answer, but we want to change the mindset from functional volunteers, cleaning kennels, and get a lot more volunteers in our management positions. And we have a lot of projects, and we're going to really want to figure out ways to get volunteers to handle those projects, whether it be like go and get dog food. And we have for all these different sources, but volunteers to coordinate that so that we don't have to do it. But moving from functional volunteers to just strategic management volunteers are what I hope to get out of this.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, and we see that a lot. Chris, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to jump in. Yes, 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 you absolutely want to find new roles for volunteers in other areas, but don't undersell the importance of your cleaning volunteers. That is 90% of what your frontline staff deals with. I mean, cleaning is just a core component of running an animal shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So it will continue to be an important role for volunteers to be in. Don't feel like you need to switch everybody from cleaning into some other type of role. Cleaning is critically important, as you well know.
Good point, Chris. Thank you. And you can incorporate cleaning into a variety of different opportunities. You don't have to just have one position for volunteers, folks, where it's just cleaning and nothing else. I discussed this on some of the diagnostic calls with some of your teams. But for example, in Dogtown at the sanctuary, if you show up for a 3-hour Dogtown shift, you are going to spend the first half of that shift cleaning before you get to walk dogs or read books to them or do some form of enrichment. So again, it doesn't always have to be a standard standalone position. You can get creative with how you incorporate. And really all of us in an animal shelter should be doing some cleaning for a variety of reasons. But thank you. Okay, HSUS, you guys are next. What would you like to get from the training?
Hi, this is Debbie. Can you hear me?
Hey, Debbie. Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, okay, great. Yeah, so I have notes from the group. We'd like to get volunteer engagement really rooted in the deepest culture of the organization, and that certainly includes executive buy-in. We'd also like more organizational buy-in from all of our departments and a better understanding from all staff on why it's important and how to get and keep volunteers engaged. Another big thing is best practices for articulating a vision and effective engagement strategies for volunteers that keeps them excited about volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
And our last big thing that stood out was, we have limited resources. So, how a volunteer coordinator can be most effective, considering, if you have only a part-time person dedicated to the role with limited resources.
Excellent. Thank you. I loved how you talked about executive leadership, and you are right. And that is why leadership support, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the 3 vital characteristics. You will not be successful in creating a culture of engagement amongst staff and volunteers. Doesn't matter how many resources you have, right? You will not be successful if you don't have true leadership support. So that's great that you started with executive leadership. Having that support will funnel down to other departments or divisions within the organization, but it starts at the top. So nice job. Okay, Gateway Pet Guardians, you guys are next. What do you want to gain from this training?
Let me pull up my notes here. Sorry, give me a second.
It's okay.
Okay. A few of the things are more structure. So we're moving into a big building, so we'd like more structure to our volunteer program as a whole. More time for staff to help with the workload so that we can feel less pressure on ourselves and be able to give some offload that to volunteers. Better orientation. We really don't have a good process for that right now at all. Tracking. I have better tracking, but to be frank, we don't really have much tracking at all. So tracking in general, so that we can learn how to gather our hours and time from non-shelter volunteers, because we have a lot of them. And then more diversification among volunteers. We're moving into a new community, so we really want to diversify our volunteer base to look like the community that we're going to be operating in.
Thank you. Nice job. I agree with everything that you've said, and we're going to teach you all of that as we talked about tracking and orientation during your diagnostic call. So thank you very much. And then last but not least, South Jersey Regional Animal Shelter. What would your team like to gain from this training? Again, if you're calling in to mute or unmute, it's *6, either way.
This is Bev. Can you hear me?
Yes, Bev. Hi.
So obviously we need all 3 in recruitment, management, and retention. And specifically, we know that we need to improve our staff engagement. We really want to improve the volunteer investment in our mission. We know that that will certainly bring us to, to have a higher retention rate. We want to give them more opportunities. We want to improve their training. We really would like to do better at managing their expectations, and we need to express our gratitude to them much more effectively.
Nice job. I really appreciate that. That was a very good self-analysis. I appreciate the transparency you and your team are taking with this approach. And you are correct. You need to communicate your mission and your vision to your volunteer pool. Leadership support is not only about having executive leadership. Understand that volunteers aren't a program, but they're a strategy to driving your mission, and treating them as such, as a part of your family and a part of your organization. So nice job, everybody. Thank you for sharing. All right, so let's talk a little bit about change management. I just said that the service enterprise process is really about changing the culture within each of your organizations, right? And it's moving from a culture of us versus them, staff and volunteers, to a culture of we. So we recognize that working towards operating as a service enterprise can be a big change for an organization. We want to spend some time looking at best practices to help you manage that change. The change process begins when you take the time to identify your organization's current state, as well as your to-be or future state, and then think about the path that you need to take to make your future state a reality. Change is constantly happening everywhere around us. Many of us are afraid of change while others embrace it. It's something that can move us forward and help us do more and get better results. So we talked about looking at the service enterprise concept and the benefits of being a service enterprise, but let's be completely honest with one another here. It is a transformation, and it is going to be a change, and for some of your organizations, quite a big change. Some of your colleagues will fully support this idea, but others may resist it at every turn. One definition of change management is moving individual behaviors from one state to another by discontinuing undesirable behaviors and then applying new ones. Many variables will determine the success of change, and we've probably all been involved in a change management process at some point in our careers that failed miserably, right? So if there's one thing I can impress upon you today, and I know Chris and Jaseth would agree with me, if you have not yet communicated to the staff at your shelter or organization that you are participating in the service enterprise process, why you are participating in the service enterprise process, and that it is a change management model moving to a culture of engagement, please, 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 I cannot say please enough, do this sooner rather than later. This process needs to happen with your staff, not to your staff. And I know I mentioned this when we did some of the diagnostic reviews. No one likes to be told in a meeting, this is happening, make it happen, boom, thank you, end of conversation. Because your staff will walk away and say, what about this? What about that? Don't I have a voice? Well, I could tell you this isn't going to work, and here's why. So again, make sure you are involving your staff and your volunteers too, but start with staff to have a discussion if you've not already done so, and do this soon. Please do not wait till training session 5 to do this. Do this in the next couple of weeks. Start talking to them about why you're going through the Service Enterprise Initiative, what you hope to gain from it, how it will benefit your staff and your volunteers and your animals, and then get their feedback about how they would like to be involved in the process and how they would like to give you ongoing feedback as you are piloting, again, piloting new things through this initiative. If you're not going to do this sooner rather than later, you are going to have some resistance with your teams,
Kimberly,
more so than you need to. Yes, Chris.
We really cannot emphasize enough the importance of communicating with your staff and with your volunteers before you even get going in this process and making changes. It's the number one thing you can do. A lot of you talked about getting staff on board. The number one thing you can do is to involve them in the process, keep them in the loop. I also want to tell you guys, the phrase service enterprise is meaningless to your staff and your volunteers. You can say, we're going through this program called Service Enterprise. Here's what this means to you. This means that we're going to be working to make the volunteer program something that is truly an asset for our organization, that's going to help take things off your plate. It's going to help us get the things done that we are struggling to get done now. And we're going to need your input all along the way. What works, what doesn't work, what do you need help with? Present it that way. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, Chris made an excellent point. You can tell them what the Service Enterprise Initiative, but what this really means is you're changing the culture of engagement. You're finding a way to better bridge the gap between staff and volunteers so everyone is happier, your animals benefit from it, and staff have less compassion, fatigue, and burnout on a daily basis. Again, Service Enterprise is just the coined phrase. For this initiative, what we're really talking about is effective engagement of staff and volunteers. End of discussion. That's really where the rubber meets the road. So as Chris said, make sure you're communicating that, not just repeating Service Enterprise over and over again, or it will get lost. All right, so you can find lots of websites, books, and other resources about change management, and we've included some of these in your participant materials. You've heard the saying that change is the only constant. You can also say that one constant about change management is the emotional impact of change. And change, large or small, can be impacted by human issues, including everything from anger and fear to excitement and commitment. Expect that you are going to face some resistance to change. Expect it, recognize this for what it is, and then label it accurately and work with your staff and volunteers to deal with it. Even some volunteers are going to be resistant, because if you're putting more structure into your program and volunteers are used to just showing up and doing what they want, when they want, how they want, it's not just going to be staff that has some resistance. I can guarantee it's going to be volunteers as well. It's those tenured volunteers you're going to have a challenge with, not the new volunteers you will recruit and onboard. So one of the most important parts of any change process is to identify why you are changing. There's that word again, why, right? Communicating the impact of why you're changing. Help people to understand and support the compelling reasons for this change. In orientation, we looked at how your organization can benefit from becoming a service enterprise. And as you're making this transition, you will need to make sure that others see the benefits and understand the why behind your work. Help them see the potential positive impact on the community, on the animals you serve, your organization, your volunteers, their colleagues, and most importantly, them as individuals. You'll have some time later in this session to start writing down the compelling reasons for your organization's transformation. Remember that change is a process, right? This figure on the screen illustrates the change curve, which is one example of how people work through this process. It shows how people move from the status quo, where they may initially feel shock and denial once change is introduced, to a state of disruption, and this is where resistance is most likely to happen, that second stage, the disruption stage. Then exploration, where people begin to let go of what they've lost and accept change, and then finally how it impacts them. Then they reach that rebuilding stage where they can accept change and the organization can really start to reap the benefits of that change. So again, your staff and volunteers are going to go through these 4 stages. You will meet the most resistance in stage 2, so keep that in mind. I am now going to turn the presentation over to Seth, and he's going to do a little group exercise, but I know Debbie from HSUS had a question, so while he's doing that, let's see what her question was. Do we have template announcements to all staff and volunteers? We don't have template announcements, Debbie, but if you go back, and I can send this to you if you or Hillary don't have a copy, and this goes for anybody in the cohort. If you go back to the document I shared, and I don't know if Pat Guerrero shared this with HSUS, so Hillary or Debbie reach out to me because I wasn't on that call. But for the rest of you, there was a document I sent when we did the informational call called Organizational Overview and Commitment. You might want to take a look at some of the information on that document and pull out talking points. From that, you can also use talking points from the participants material to kind of put together a template or communication of what you think would work best for your organization. And again, if you need that overview commitment document, reach out to me and I can send it out. All right, Seth, are you ready?
Yes,
It's
you
all
guys
yours.
should be able to see my little screen, my group activity. So
thank you.
All of you, yeah, thank you. All of you that are, in your separate areas, make sure you get logged on pretty quick. This group activity, we're going to focus on, a time that we went through change management. So we're going to answer these bullet points. We're going to take about 5 minutes, and I would like 2 organizations for time to volunteer, or I can voluntold you. I don't want to do that, but I can. So we're going to spend 5 minutes. We're going to describe a time, or you guys are going to describe a time that you were involved in an organizational change. Why was this change happening? What was the reaction of the staff, board members, other stakeholders? What helped you get through this change? And it can be whatever helps. We want good information there. So what could have made the change more successful or easier to make? And how can the lessons learned help you manage your service enterprise transformation? So we're going to do a lot of self-reflection right now. So about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back together, and I would like 2 organizations to volunteer. And your time can start now.
we ever go through it, we'll be great.
Here?
Yeah.
Not really. Well,
I did mute. I think it was a second chance. I just wanted you guys to be muted so we couldn't hear your conversation. We want to hear it when you share possibly.
Seth, I think some of the folks at SPCA lost audio. So if you guys are still having trouble hearing us, can you let us know?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I got an email.
Oh no. It's your 2-minute warning, guys. 2 more minutes.
Seminole County will volunteer.
Thank you so much. I'll be sure to call on you guys when we're finished with time. I appreciate it. All right, everybody, let's come back together. I know Seminole County, you guys can go first since you volunteered yourself, and tell us about a time, that you went through organizational change.
Figures. Okay, a couple of years ago, we went from being with public safety, the Division of Public Safety, to Office of Emergency Management. So we got a whole brand new department and chief administrator. So that was the big change that we were involved in. That was organizational. And we are a government agency. So the reason why the change happened was because it was a government reorganization. The reaction of the staff was a lot of uncertainty because we went from knowing what was going on to not knowing what was going on and hearing about all these new ideas and things that were going to affect us as employees, but we just had no idea where they were going with this and why they put us in that department. So one of the things that has helped us was our new administrator started holding staff meetings, which we really hadn't had before, where we would get information and be able to ask questions and things like that. We had a little bit more of an open door policy with our administrator as well as the chief administrator, and everybody got real comfortable being able to talk to everybody. So that helped us get through the change, but something that could have been more successful or made it easier was it was absolutely too much too soon for us. We had a lot of changes in a matter of a year or 2 years that were just overwhelming to the point where we probably lost some staff over it. So it was just way too much, too fast. So a slower pace without so many changes at once. See the success of one change and then move on to the next change. That would be something that, you know, would help manage a transformation for us.
Great. No, I mean, we definitely hear about it even in, you know, we're going through this now in Best Friends. You know, we shift as a nonprofit too, because we need to continue to be progressive and make decisions that need to be, you know, for the better, or, you know, a change that needs to happen. So I totally get where you're coming from. Also, having worked in Muni, sometimes they don't always do the best, they being very vague in general at communicating that downward. So I hope that you guys learn from that situation. And I don't think you're going to do this. It sounds like you're definitely going to communicate with your staff as you're shifting volunteer engagement within your internal structure of your organization.
Right.
So thank you for sharing. And I believe Pasco County, you wanted to share as well. You volunteered yourself, so you guys can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. We recently, in 2019, we launched a feline intake diversion program called Lead Them Be. It was inspired by another shelter in Arizona. The reason why was in 2018, we saw a 44% increase in 1 year in cat intake in our organization. And so we knew basically why the change was happening. We had to do something. Our organization could not sustain another 44% increase in cat intake. The reaction from the staff was positive for some, and then negative for others. A lot of naysayers, a lot of people believing it wouldn't work. And then what helped us get through it, and we talked about this as a team, we kept coming back to communication. We got everybody on board. It was our animal control officers, our medical team, our customer service staff, the customer service staff at the county. We worked with the county marketing and fit team to develop you know, educational videos for this program. So we all worked together to create it, and so everybody had a hand in it. And I kind of, you know, as you guys are mentioning, share this with your volunteers, share this with your volunteers. You know, that's something that we definitely did with this change, was we involved everybody. What could have made the change more successful? The same as the last group. This was a decision and a change we had to make in a very short amount of time because we knew we could not sustain another year. So it was all of a sudden, you know, the ball was dropped. We're no longer taking kittens. Here's what to do with them. So more time to be able to make that change would have made it easier. But the lessons learned for Service Enterprise moving forward is that communication piece. We've already shared, you know, with our all hands team that we're going through this training. We've shared with a lot of our individual volunteers. We have a volunteer meeting, a quarterly volunteer meeting on Saturday, and we're going to be presenting the entire, you know, Service Enterprise, because we've seen the success in our recent change of that communication piece.
Great, I love it. Yeah, communication, you'll hear, and I think all of us understand that that's one of our biggest issues in everything we do. Sometimes we cannot communicate, and sometimes we can over communicate. Necessarily over communication is not a negative thing, but some people do see it as negative. But no, I really like that you guys launched that program and you understood that communication. And again, going back to both you and Seminole, celebrating those small wins and those successes is a huge component of communication too. And we'll talk more about that in this training, to get people excited and to bring those, you know, naysayers to the, I guess, the good side, as we'll call it. So thank you guys for sharing. So leadership lessons from the dancing guy. I know that sounds really crazy. We usually do this video, but there's sound issues. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna post the link that you see on the screen in the chat box. And then you guys are gonna have to open that up in your web browser. It's like a short 3-ish minute video. And then we're gonna come back and talk about, you know, what were the takeaways from that really cute little video that we'll watch. So we'll do about 4 minutes just to, you know, if there's any issues, again, we will share all of this resources and you'll be able to watch this video if you have any technology issues moving forward with anything. So let me post that in the link, the chat box. Oh my gosh, that's huge. All right, that link should be in the chat box for you guys. And again, just either copy it, or if it is hyperlinked, you can just click on it and it should pull it for you, and we'll give you about 4 minutes and we'll come back and talk about it. So we'll start 4 minutes now.
And Shelby Humane, that's okay. When I send out the link tomorrow for the recorded webinar, you'll see the video is in that link, so you guys can watch the video on your own at another time if you want.
Also, if you just go to YouTube and search Dancing Guy, it's the first 2 videos that show up in your search returns.
Thank you both. I appreciate that. Oh, technology.
It keeps us on our toes, doesn't it?
It does. It keeps us really like, whoo. Look at Shelby Humane. They're creating a workaround with their technology issues, pulling it up on their smartphones. Good job, guys. All right. So some of the main takeaways from that really adorable video. I remember watching this video when I went through Service Enterprise and laughing pretty much the whole time. It is a good song that's in the background. The importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. That's one of the biggest things. That's number one. Number two, make it all about the movement, not about you. So we're making this about volunteer engagement. We're not making it necessarily about we as executive leaders, we as coordinators, managers, we as animal welfare, we want to make it more about our community and engaging them appropriately and be public and easy to follow. So we don't want to create unneeded barriers when we're going through this change management process. The whole point of this is to remove them and make it easy as possible to follow. Leadership is definitely glorified. I think a lot of us that have been or in that understand. It was the first follower that transformed that lone nut, as they call it, into a leader. And then there's no movement without the first follower. The best way to make a movement is to be courageous and follow and show others how to follow. So those are some of the big takeaways from the video. And any of you who could not see the video, like Kimberly had said, it's going to be in your folders. It's really short, really cute, and it definitely is a good takeaway from everything that we're going to be going through. So moving on, as Kimberly has mentioned and we've talked about, there's a lot of different resources about change management. And on the screen is the one we're really going to focus on today and through Service Enterprise. And this is just one example. So Kotter's 8-step change model was developed by Dr. John Kotter, and he's a professor at Harvard Business School and an expert in change management. So Dr. Kotter introduced this 8-step change management process in his 1995 book, Leading Change. He then in 2014 published a book-long length study titled Accelerate that increased the scope of these 8-step process to give organizations additional capabilities to lead change under the particular conditions of today's world. So we're going to go through these steps and we're going to go dive a little deeper into them. So the first one is about creating a sense of urgency for change. So this really focuses on a big opportunity that is both rational in light of the available data and emotionally compelling to people inside the organization. We talk about, like we said, impact and the why, and you'll hear us talk about a lot about impact of how it needs to appeal to the mind and the heart. So that's exactly what this does. And we have a sense of urgency. We've already identified that in what we do every day, and that's to save as many animals' lives as possible. But our deeper dive into our sense of urgency is how are we going to engage our community and our volunteers to help us in delivering that mission. The second step is Accelerator involves creating a group of stakeholders to guide the initiative. That's known as the guiding coalition. So this team is made up of people from all levels and areas in the organization and will help ensure that change happens. So you guys today on the call are, the main factors of the guiding coalition, but you're going to continue to build upon that, and we'll go in more detail. Number 3 is the third accelerator, which is guiding coalition develops a change vision or strategic initiative. So the vision fits the opportunity that's driving the urgency behind the change, and the strategic initiatives can move you with a speed and agility towards that vision. The fourth accelerator is to enlist a volunteer army. So note that when Kotter discusses volunteers, he doesn't mean like how we talk about volunteers. He's talking about the term for the employees who actually volunteered to be a part of the change effort. The Guiding Coalition and others share the information about the change vision and strategic initiatives in a way that leads large numbers of people to buy into the action. This can result in a large number of people wanting to help. The fifth accelerator enables action by removing barriers. So everyone in the network, including the Guiding Coalition and the Volunteer Army, will work quickly to achieve initiatives. They will identify and remove barriers that can slow or stop strategic important work. The sixth accelerator focuses on generating and celebrating short-term wins. The network will create large and small wins, which should be as visible as possible to the entire organization. So we talked about that earlier. A part of communication is articulating those small wins and getting it out there so everybody can see it throughout the whole organization. They should also be celebrated, even if only small. This can be powerful in building and sustaining the system and providing credibility and promoting cooperation. The seventh accelerator is to sustain acceleration. So people have a tendency to lose momentum after 1 or 2 wins. So this step focuses on the importance of completing all the sub-initiatives that contribute to overall success. And the final accelerator is to institute change. This accelerator makes the change permanent by incorporating new approaches and behaviors into your organization's culture and practices. So a big advantage of the model is that it engages people from all levels of the organization, and the accelerators can be done congruently and consistently, or continuously, excuse me. So we are going to be focusing on today the first 2 accelerators. So that's creating a sense of urgency and building your guiding coalition. The guiding coalition will be the team that leads service enterprise process at your shelter. This team needs to be involved in all trainings and coaching processes and in creating the action plan. We cannot say that enough. Your guiding coalition should be a part of all of the training as much as possible. We understand that you guys have a lot going on in shelters, and the coaching processes after we finish training for your one-on-ones, and a part of creating your action plan to move change forward in your shelter. So because you've gotten this far in service enterprise work, you see a sense of urgency in your organization like we discussed. Cotter's next accelerator is to build a guiding coalition. For now, we're going to look at 5 to 7 members that are internal in your organization, or it could be more depending on the size of your org. In session 2, we'll look at building support outside your organization. So Cotter maintains that it's not possible to bring everyone on board for change at the same time. Instead, the optimal approach is to start with a small team committed to the approach and perhaps a small project, and build momentum and achieve initial success by gradually bringing on other stakeholders on board. It's important to generate and celebrate visible wins like we discussed earlier, and to consolidate and reinforce the achievements of change when they do occur. No one person, no matter how competent, is capable of single-handedly developing your service enterprise vision, communicating it to vast numbers of people, eliminating all obstacles, generating short-term wins, leading and managing dozens of change projects, and anchoring new approaches deep into your organization's culture. So again, service enterprise is not a project that belongs to just the volunteer coordinator or manager or whoever spearheads volunteer engagement in your organization. It cannot just be them. It must be your entire team. Putting together the right coalition can lead your transformation, and it is critical to its success. The coalition must have the right composition and significant level of trust and a shared objective. So your guiding coalition should reflect leadership. So the group should have enough proven leaders to be able to drive the change process. There also should be managers. So you should have enough key managers to drive implementation. Expertise, all relevant points of view should be represented so that informed, intelligent decisions can be made. And credibility is very, very vital. The group should be seen and respected by those in the organization so that the group's communications or pronouncements when they're being discussed are taken seriously by other employees. The first 2 points are particularly important when we discuss both managers and leaders being a part of the coalition and how it's vital. So we want to make sure, again, to highlight that leadership is to drive the change process and managers are to drive the implementation. Your coalition should also include people who are concerned about the impact that the change has on different groups of society. So this is within your organization, stakeholders, this is clients, animals, colleagues, etc., and your own personal impact. So sometimes we definitely need to discuss, what about me? What does this do for me? What does this look like for me? Your professional development, etc. And additionally, if your paid employees are represented by a union, we would definitely recommend or consider that you include one of those members a part of your guiding coalition, so they're knowledgeable and they can be, any insight that they might have, they can definitely discuss with you guys for the change process moving forward. Your guiding coalition will help to define the changes needed and ultimately aid in the implementation process. Do you have any questions about that before we move on?
Can I just add a comment, Seth?
Of course, anytime.
Thank you. And so we're going to sound like broken records because that's what we do, because we've been doing this process. We've been doing the Service Enterprise Initiative with animal welfare organizations since April of 2016. And so the 3 of us have seen what works and doesn't work. And I know I said this during the orientation, but again, you're going to see we sound like broken records and tend to repeat ourselves because even though we repeat ourselves, this still happens over and over again. So they say you have to tell the average person something 7 times for it to sink in. I'm not saying that's true for all of you. You guys probably pick it up in 2 or 3, but that's what the research shows. We cannot.
So she's saying, listen to what she's about to say. That's the point.
Exactly. We cannot impress upon you guys enough that if everyone on your guiding coalition is not fully engaged in this process, when we get into action planning, which comes hot, and I see HSUS has a cat on their guiding coalition.
I love that.
Hillary's got a feline friend hanging out today. If all of you are not actively involved in this process, particularly when we get into action planning, and I'm going to talk about action planning in training number 3, and if your leadership is not involved in this process, you will not be successful with service enterprise. And I'm not saying that to be Debbie Downer, but we have done this long enough with enough organizations to know that where the rubber meets the road is whether leadership gets involved and communicates the vision for what your culture of engagement should look like. If your leadership is not involved, they do not do this. They drop out of service enterprise after the training. They stop doing coaching calls. They're not working on action planning. And again, as Seth just said, you leave it up to the volunteer coordinators or manager to make it happen. We're not going to be able to certify you. So we never want to be in a position where we have to tell an organization you've spent all this time and effort. And to be honest with you guys, we spend the time and effort too, because we want to give everybody quality, right? So we invest time in this too, but we hate to say to an organization, we're not going to be able to certify you. I've had to do it. I had to do it last week. It's not fun, but it's, to be fair, we're just trying to say this as much as possible up front, which is why I need leadership involved and I need middle management involved. You guys all know that staff are not going to do something if they don't think leadership is invested and is going to follow through. They're just going to go back to doing whatever they've always been doing and go, yeah, that sounds good. Nothing's going to happen. Let's just keep doing what we do. So again, not to sound like a broken record, but we know what works with this process and we know what doesn't work. And time again, where animal welfare groups are getting hung up is leadership is dropping out of the process or not being involved enough consistently. I know running a shelter is a lot of work, and sometimes leadership has to step out and do other things. We get that, but stepping out and doing other things for 3, 4, 5 months and never being involved, and then wondering 3 months before it's time to certify why we're telling your team is not going to make it, that's not going to work. So again, not to be a Debbie Downer, I just believe in not wasting anyone's time because we never have enough of it in animal welfare, and being as frank about that and as transparent as possible. So thank you for my diatribe, and I'm going to let Chris present now.
All righty, can y'all see my screen?
Yes, and we can see your notes too.
Your presenter notes, yeah.
You can see my presenter notes?
Yeah, we know you're cheating.
Gosh darn it. Gosh darn it all. Not in what I'm looking at, but here we go again.
Technology, it's keeping us on our toes like
I
you said today.
swear to goodness. All right.
You're good.
We'll see. What about now?
Beautiful.
Cheapers, creepers. Okay. Every time I unplug my computer and take it someplace else and bring it back, we have this issue. All right. So we've talked about the people who are going to be on your guiding coalition. We also want to talk about sort of the next level out, which are your champions, your service enterprise champions. And your board members can really be an asset to you. They can be champions of what you're going to be trying to accomplish during the service enterprise process. Some of you are nonprofits and you have a nonprofit board. Some of you, like municipal shelters, you might answer to a deputy director, you might answer to a county board of supervisors, some other organization or supervising group outside of your immediate shelter. So what we're saying here applies to any of those types of groups. What we encourage you to do, because often in order to make changes, you have to have the approval of your board or those next level leadership people. Try to identify several board members who will be champions of your service enterprise transformation. These champions are willing to step up and be supportive of everything that you're trying to do. They're enthusiastic about it, and they will be actively involved in doing whatever they need to do to help make these changes happen. They can also help to promote change acceptance in other people, the rest of the board, the staff, the community, etc. And another thing to think about is when it comes to building internal support with your staff as a whole, beginning with your guiding coalition, is see how engaging volunteers can be beneficial to their work. Have everybody on your guiding coalition take a look at their job description or think about what is on their to-do list every day or every week, and identify some specific roles, some specific tasks that volunteers can help them with. Because again, when we're talking about change management, it's not just what you say, more importantly, it's what you do. So you want the people on your guiding coalition to be modeling the behavior that you're going to be asking everyone else to demonstrate. And a big part of that is showing that they are going to be engaging volunteers in new and different ways. So now we're going to spend some time looking at, as an organization, so each of you in your own groups, looking at some ways to build internal support. So if you take a look in your notebook, your service enterprise notebook, find pages 9 and 10. For me, they're back to back. And you're looking for something that says Building Internal Support Worksheet. Everybody find that? It is in the session 1 section, page 9. Anyone completely lost? Everybody got it? Successful? All right. What I'm going to do is give you guys some time to work on completing this worksheet, because guess what? I know if I tell you to do it later, it's probably not going to happen. So I'm going to give you some time to do it right now. And what you're going to be doing is working together as a team. On the front side here, you're going to identify people on your staff, or maybe volunteers, or maybe board members, who knows, who could represent each of the characteristics here: leadership, expertise, credibility, etc. You're going to put down actual names of actual people. And these are, and also put down the people who are most concerned about each of these areas of impact. Okay, so when you think of leadership, who are the most important people in your organization to include? When you think about people on your staff who have credibility, who are those people? The ones that everybody listens to and believes and goes to when they have questions. When you think about impact on clients, who are the people in your organization that are always in the forefront thinking about the welfare of the animals, or how it impacts your community, the things that you're doing? So write down those people on the front side. On the back side, if you turn it over, this is asking you to come up with 3 board members. And again, this might be County Board of Supervisors, might be City Council, might be something other than an actual board, whatever your next level is outside of your immediate organization. Come up with 3 members of that level and write down why it is you think that they would be a good champion for service enterprise. Now, for some organizations, you might only have 3 people on your board. So if you can only come up with 1 person, that's okay, but at least come up with 1 and write down why you think that person would be a good champion for service enterprise. And last but not least, at the bottom of the back side, says, as a team, identify the first 5 steps that you will take to begin building your guiding coalition and securing the support of your service enterprise champions. So for example, step 1 might be identifying them. What would step 2 be? What would step 3 be? How are you going to bring them on board with what you're doing in service enterprise? Does this make sense? Do you have any questions? All right, I'm going to give you 15 minutes to work on this, and I will give you like a 2-minute warning, and then we will come back together. Okay? All right, get to work. I know I'm supposed to give you a 2-minute warning, but I'm looking at the faces on the camera. Looks like a lot of people are done. If you're on camera and you're finished, raise your hand up in front of your face. A lot of people still working? Okay, I will go ahead and give you your 2 more minutes then to wrap up. All righty, we are going to come back together now, please. If you finish this, fantastic. You can use this as your guideline to get started bringing in your guiding coalition and notifying, talking with your potential champions. If not, please finish this up on your own time. All right, we are going to take a look now at vision statements. Get this out of the way. Now, your organization probably already has a mission statement and a vision statement. And what we're encouraging you to do, in fact, I guess we're demanding it, is that you come up with a vision statement for how you imagine yourself engaging volunteers as you go through the service enterprise program. And you can refer to this as your vision for volunteer engagement or your service enterprise vision. A vision is a statement about what your organization wants to become, and it's a critical early step in transforming your organization into a service enterprise. Crafting this vision for how your organization can work with volunteers will help you become a unifying force and help your internal coalition lead the transformation. It will also let your staff know where the organization is going. And ideally, if you write a really good vision, it will generate enthusiasm among those working toward this transformation. Your vision should be something that resonates with all members of your organization and that's going to make them feel motivated and part of something bigger than themselves. It should really stretch the organization's capabilities and image of itself as it transforms into a service enterprise. When stakeholders internalize the vision statement, they will take action to make the vision statement come true. A good vision statement is often just a sentence or a short paragraph of 2 to 4 sentences, or maybe just a bulleted list of phrases. There's no hard rule about how to create a vision statement. The most essential thing to remember is that you need to take the time to articulate what your organization aspires to be, and that it is something that is achievable. And it's important to phrase the vision in a positive and inspirational manner. There are 6 things that 6 characteristics that all effective vision statements have, and you can see them here on this slide. The first is that it is imaginable. It conveys a clear picture of what your future is going to look like. The second is that it is desirable. It needs to appeal to the long-term interest of the employees, the clients, the stakeholders, everyone who has a stake in the service enterprise transformation. So for this, it definitely includes our volunteers. Feasible. You need to make sure that it has realistic and attainable goals. Focused, that those goals are clear enough to provide guidance when making decisions. Flexible, that it allows for individual initiative and alternative responses when conditions change. Things never change in the shelter environment, do they? It's always a nice, consistent flow. And you want it to be communicable, that easy to communicate and something that can be explained quickly. So what we're going to do in the next little bit of time is start working on your service enterprise vision. And we're going to start this on an individual basis. Everybody who's on this call is going to get something they can write on and something they can write with. And I want you to come up with 10 words, that's our goal, that would characterize your organization once you become a service enterprise. What is it going to look like? When you're successful and you become a service enterprise, how is your organization going to look? What is your volunteer program going to look like? How will volunteers and your paid staff describe your organization? And how will the world be different because of you and what your organization is doing? So this is just nothing but a brainstorm. The first 10 words that come to mind as to how you envision your organization being once you're a service enterprise. I'm going to give you 4 minutes. Ready, set, go. Okay, 1 minute warning. All righty. Let's come back together. Can I have everyone who's in front of a computer type in one word that they, in the chat box, that they put down on their list for how they envision? Focused, engaging, empowered, efficient. By the way, you're not cheating if you hear something you like and add it to your list. A model.
Pasco said fun, Chris.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Fun, initiative, educational, leader, adaptive, effective. Y'all are typing in so fast. Harmonious, wouldn't that be nice? Efficient. What else have we got here? Leader, progressive, life-saving, visionary, bold, rewarding, welcoming, lifesavers, innovative, mighty, leaders, inclusive, diverse, community-focused, responsive, compassionate. We're really compassionate. Collaborative, visionary, empowered, non-bureaucratic. Who said non-bureaucratic? I'd like to wish you luck with that. That is a beautiful goal to set for yourself. Professional, bigger, scalable, transformative, professional, vibrant. All right, excellent. Good start, everybody. Now, what you're going to be doing is taking this random list of brainstormed words, and you're going to be, as a group, using these words as a basis to actually write your service enterprise vision. And I'm going to show you how we did it when Best Friends was going through Service Enterprise. This does not mean you have to do it this way. It's just to give you one idea of a possible approach. We used an online word mapping tool. And you can see every year I put one up here and then it stops being free. So this is a new one I just added today because it's still free for you to use. But what we did is we took all the words that all of us in our group came up with. And yeah, I know you can't read this. I'm going to read some of it to you. And what we did is we sort of clustered those words so that they kind of had a similar theme. So for example, from all of our lists, we had the words progressive, flexible, evolving, creative, open-minded, transformative, and cutting edge. Some of those sound familiar. They're words you guys came up with. And we clustered all those together and came up with the big idea of we are innovative. And then we took the words valued, engaging, example setting, respected, shining, inspiring, motivational, empowering, and convincing. And we clustered those and came up with the big idea, we are role models. So we ended up with 5 big ideas. And then we used those 5 big ideas to write our mission or our vision statement, which I'm not going to show you. We'll show you later, but not now, because we want you to come up with your very, very own. So however you guys choose to go from your list of words to an actual vision statement is up to you. This is just one option. And again, if you want to use a mind mapping tool, here's the link for one right here. All right, I am going to hand things back over
Actually,
to
Chris, you
Kimberly.
can just control the screen because I'm actually going to have you talk after I go through this next slide. I'm going to have you talk on the last.
Okie dokie.
It'll just be easy.
All right. Okay.
All right, so we're almost done. Bear with us another couple of minutes, folks. Yes, we're going to let you get out of here in under 2 hours. So we aim to please. We like to under promise and over deliver. So next week is laying the foundation part 2. It starts from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mountain Time. Thank you for logging on early. If you guys can continue to do that. And again, there will be breakout session exercises for every single training. So if you're not able to have your team in the same room, you do have to have a way to communicate with one another so you can do these exercises. Your homework or pre-work, depending on how you want to look at it, for next week's session is to complete your service enterprise vision. So take all of those 10 words you each came up with as individuals and get together with your team and come up with your service enterprise vision. This should not be identical to the vision you have for your organization. This is your vision relative to creating a culture of engagement at your organization with staff and volunteers. So it might include life-saving. That's certainly fine. But again, make sure that it is focused on effective engagement of staff and volunteers. So think about and write about what success would look like. And then be prepared. We will call on you. So I am giving everyone the heads up. You are going to have to share out the service enterprise vision statement next week and identify your guiding coalition. Please bring flip chart paper and markers to the next session. We're going to get a little creative and artistic next week. Again, if you're not in the same room, that's fine, but everybody needs to be an active participant, even if you are not going to be the final artist or illustrator. So that's your homework for next week. Tomorrow, I will send out the recording link to this webinar. You already have the link to the folder for laying the foundation. What is not in there is the slides. So I will add the slides from today's presentation, and you will get the recording link from today as well. And then I will also remind you of what your pre-work is for next week. So that email will be sent out to the team leads sometime tomorrow. Does anybody have any questions about that before I let Chris wrap up with the next slide? Okay, Chris, it's all yours.
All right. Ooh. Oh, yes. You guys have gotten an invitation from me or an email from me talking about the bonus webinar that I'm going to be doing. Along with retention, the other thing we hear all the time is that organizations struggle to get their staff on board with the volunteer program. We heard it many times at the beginning of this session today. So we like to try to address this as quickly as possible at the beginning of the service enterprise process. So the first session I'm going to be doing of this is on October 1st. I've already heard back from quite a few of you that you wanted me to send you the invite, so I have sent those out. If you have not contacted me yet and you want to do this, please go ahead and just send me an email and I will send you the invite with all of the GoToMeeting connection info on it. If you cannot make it, I will also be repeating this on Wednesday, December 4th. But again, the sooner you get your staff included in this process, the better. And this webinar is going to talk to you about what that looks like, how you make that happen.
Thank you, Chris. And Chris will record those and she will take the better of the two sessions and then send out the link. So if for some reason
Yep.
you're unable to participate in either of those, you will get the recording of that presentation. We would highly suggest participating live because she does a nice Q&A at the end, but if you can't, you'll have the content in the body of the presentation. And again, we're always available, guys, in between training sessions. So if you have questions, don't wait for the next training session. You can email us and we'll be happy to respond ASAP. Are there any questions before we let you go with 15 minutes to spare? All right, well, thank you for your participation. We'll look forward to hearing everyone's service enterprise vision statement next Tuesday. And again, I'll get those training materials out to you from today's session tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.